and this is going to sound pretty pessimistic for North American talent, but I'm not saying we don't have any, and I'm not saying if you're a North American player on the ladder right now who hasn't got their shot, you deserve it. But let's go through this. Go with the first image for me, Travis.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to see, I think, but
yeah, it's more just about. I'll just give the context for it.
Sure.
At the very very bottom. Oh my actual tweet text is in the way. Is there any way just to show the image? Oh, there we go. Sorry. So at the very very bottom, it's a little hard to see, but this is basically a listing of the player rosters from 2017 and then to 2018. And on the left two columns are NA, middle two are Europe, and last two are LEC or LCK. And what I did was I used a text differentiator to check for new names and whatnot, new words, and did that for each league. I saw that there were a couple small errors with it, like maybe by 1 or 2. I saw Xerxes on both lists for some reason, but it counted them as new. So I'm not exact, but I double checked, and for the most part, it's pretty accurate. North America has 26 new players in 2019 through 2017. EU has 32 new ones, and the LCK has 34 new players. These are all 10-team leagues. I looked at it with LPL as well, but LPL has 12 teams, then they expanded to 16. So I just cut them out because I didn't want to.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks. I was just like, fuck that. Let's make it simple. And so, what's interesting though is even though NA added 26 players, which is already the lowest, 12 of those players played in other leagues before and are not really new players. They're imports, right? So Sven is an example of someone who left the EU list and joined the NA list, and that happens across the board for North America. And so realistically, we've only added 14 new players, right? So if you do the math on roughly how many more players EU is finding over NA, 32 divided by 14 effectively comes out to 2.29, rounding up to 2.3 just to keep it a little easier. So they find roughly 2.23 new players than North America does. Can you go to the next image for me, Travis?
Yeah.
Here we go.
It'll take. It switched. It'll just take you.
Yeah.
Professor Markz is in class.
Okay. So here we go. Here are the percentage population breakdowns of server sizes of ranked players. North America.
This is before Fortnite came out, by the way.
This is 2017, and so I don't have super good up-to-date data. This is one of the best things I've seen on it, and we did start this in 2017. That was the rosters I compared, and so it might change around a little bit. This is also omitting China because once again they break the rules. They have many more times players than the entire rest of the world added together. So North America, you see, has 10.8% of the population. EU West has 24.9%. So if we do the same math and get how many more players there are in Europe than NA, 24.9 divided by 10.8 comes out to 2.3.
Oh, which is, as you said a second ago, the amount that additional that they are adding. So it actually lines up. That's actually super smart.
It actually lines up perfectly. Korea is a little bit, they actually have a little bit smaller of a server percentage, and they actually find a couple more players. So you could say, maybe LCK has the leg up on finding players and implementing them into their system, and EU, obviously is doing a good job as well. But you do see that there's at least a pretty close relationship between your population size and how many new players you're finding. Now, that's not to comment on quality of new players, which is a separate issue, which we can get into potentially. But at least in terms of is NA finding enough new talent? At least relative to the server size, is yes, because what you do if you remove imports, you say let's stop using imports, you don't suddenly find more good NA players. You start giving slots to players who are getting them just because they're North American, not because they're necessarily any better than the options that exist around the world. And I think it's a little erroneous, and this was the other thing I tweeted yesterday, was I don't think over-investing in North American talent will cause more problems than it will fix. Mm-hmm. And the same way that there's a lot of other factors, we're importing talent, so it's suppressing some of our new players. We would maybe be finding more if we didn't do this. But at the same time, we're also taking players, LCK gets their players taken by China. LEC has their whole master system. It's not exactly a one-to-one perfect comparison, but at the very least, I don't think that we are super hurting our own scene with imports, and I don't think that there is secretly this layer of North American talent that we haven't found. I think that, we find roughly the same rate. We find Licorice, they find Keen and Naguri, right? We find Viper, they find Doran and Sword, right? It's basically 2 to 1. And Keen and Naguri are way better than Licorice. And so people say, well, then we're not developing our talent that well. But our veterans also don't stack up against their veterans. It's not just our new players that can't stack up to their old player or their new players. Our old players don't stack up to their old players either. So it's not necessarily either just talent development either. It's a larger problem about maybe our approach to the game, how we play it. There's a lot of other problems in the North American scene, and I'm not trying to say that like population size is the only one, but from the perspective of how North America finds new talent, it is at least proportional to our server size. So I don't, that's my take. I think going for North American players and just throwing them into our system is wrong. And to highlight this even further, if you go and look at our academy system, it is full of what I call fodder players that are just there because their names and teams don't really care. I was talking to an executive about, the problems with academy and things like that, and he was saying, people cancel scrims all the time. It's not professional. There's all these problems with the academy system. And another problem, I think, is just the quality of players that they're putting in there. I would say there's roughly 15 players who I've identified as people who have been around for plenty long to know that they don't have this ceiling that we're waiting for them to necessarily hit. And I'm not going to name names because I don't want to turn this into a flame session, but those are spots where I'm saying, why not go to other regions and properly scout out their young players and try and find the Chovies, the Keens, the Humanoids, the Larsons, these people that other regions are finding before they find them. Why do we have all NA teams in academy of players who have been playing for 4+ years? And I'm not counting veterans in this. There's veterans in there who are there for a stabilizing presence, like a Darshan. I don't count a Darshan as a fodder because it's not like he's there, that we're waiting to see him become good or anything. He's there to help be a stabilizing presence, to be a voice of leadership, and I think you can argue that that's very useful. Same with Huhi and some of these guys. But there are, I would say, 15 and almost half the league in academy. The North America, the top laners are in that kind of that's an area where I am baffled that we don't just import more people like Broken Blade and put them in academy and give them some time, like Jukes. And some teams do this with FBI and Lost and Maxi for FlyQuest in the jungle and Scarlet, but that's what every team should be doing basically is trying to find these players in other regions, so we're not just grabbing top players that other regions are no longer using, or maybe trying to woo them after they've already been discovered by these other leagues. But we should also be addressing it from the bottom in the academy system of finding new players that could potentially grab and become real stars in the league. So that's my solution.
My concern, Mark, I'm glad you prepped that for the start of the show. You don't have to make a YouTube video now because you just talked for the past 10 minutes.
Sorry.
There you go.
I was making a YouTube video today, and then I just was like, I'll just do it on Hotline League.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
So I'm going to be honest. It's not going great for NA at Worlds this year. And I figured, we're always talking about growing talent. Why not journey out into the heartland of the U.S., where we grow all sorts of stuff, to see if we can, I could find the next crop of NA talent out here in these beautiful fields. Anyway, thank you so much to Alienware and DraftBuff for sponsoring our Worlds coverage. They're, helping me out here find the talent. And they're also giving away some stuff. Alienware has a link in the description below. And DraftBuff as well. Great stuff over there. Click the Alienware one. You're gonna get some cool stuff. All right, you can sign up. There's a giveaway. We're doing it anyway. All that stuff is on there. Also, take a look at some of the things that we're using. The gear is listed there. Also, you can use Travis 10 off Q3 in order to save 10% on your order.